Got our first skid marks from my panic stop.
Hey guys, welcome back. So we finally got the car in the shop. If you're just joining us, this is a project car I bought about 2 years ago and more or less had to build a shop to work on the thing. This is a 1965 Ford Galaxie sedan. It's got the 289 small block and the C4 3-speed transmission. It also has a 9-inch, which comes standard on these cars. So in today's video, we're really just going to go over some of the exterior on it and most of the underside. We'll go over some of the rough spots. The car's in great condition. I know it's been under a tarp for the last 2 years, so it's a little weathered, but it could be much worse, believe me. So guys, I've got a lot in mind to do to this car. Engine's coming out. I got to pull the old fuel tank out. I want to get the body off the frame a little bit. So I can start cleaning some rust and fixing some spots here and there. But the car is where it's going to be until it's ready to go for the most part. So this is our next project. So before I talk too much again, let's get to the video.
Quick Jack makes a extendable frame you put on that so you can have more of a spread, but this is fine. Most of the weight on these cars is it's usually more like a 60-40 weight distribution, but this is fine. I don't feel unsafe working on this thing. This is only on the first notch. It can get much higher. And the cat's back. You can see on the frame there's a little hole there, and it's covered up now, but you can see there's there's two holes over here on that frame. I think that's where you're supposed to set your points anyway, so we're not that far off. It's fine.
All right, guys, it's about 37 degrees. I've had that heater going for about 45 minutes. It's doing all right in here, I guess. So let's take a look at underneath. This is the second time I'm doing this. My camera, I'm using the kind of the macro feature, so I can't use the built-in light for some reason. So I didn't have the best lighting on the first go around, so let's try again. So let's go ahead and start at the back of the car. I'm not going to point out the obvious stuff, but I probably will help you along with the orientation. Obviously you can see the back side of the frame. So going under the quarter here, you start seeing right away what looks like a bunch of mud and a bunch of junk. So it is a mixture of mud, of course, and dirt, but more to the point, this is the old undercoating. You can see like stuff, this right here, it just comes off and there's metal underneath. Some spots you can see there is a little bit of rust starting to form, but this is all undercoating. And you're going to see that throughout the whole underside of the car. It definitely makes the underside of the car look a lot worse than it is. Believe me, but it's not. It's all just clumpy undercoating and mud and dirt and stuff that's got thrown up over the years. So what we have right here is our trunk sill. We'll take a look at the inside of that in a minute. And then we have our old fuel tank, which ruptured around there. But right away you can see our 9-inch our shock absorbers, our springs. I'll probably jump around between recordings on certain things. So like I said, this is the second time I'm recording this, and some of the footage is going to be better than the others because of the lighting. You can see our brake lines are pretty salty. All of this stuff is going to be redone. The whole suspension, the brake lines, the fuel system, every suspension component, the rear end's getting pulled out, fuel tank obviously. I don't need to go on and on about that. You can see some of the rough spots though on the trunk, or on the trunk sill. As you can see, the line where the undercoating stops, and then you have metal and more license plates. And as you can see, there's some other rough spots right here. The trunk is actually open, that's why you can see the daylight, sort of. Again, nothing that I'm too worried about, nothing that can't be just fixed. So we do have a lot of work ahead of us as far as getting all this undercoating off and everything down to bare metal, so I can just rattle can it, rattle can and or fix what needs fixed with, patch everything together, weld it really good, seal everything, and get everything painted. Again, I'm not trying to make this a restoration project. It just needs to be functional, and then we'll work on the form later. But you can see over the years, just welding on exhaust hangers and stuff like that. The worst part, I guess one of the worst parts, was right here. I don't know exactly how that started. I think at some point somebody hit something, because it folded up some metal here, and somehow that probably let moisture in somehow. I'm not sure, but we'll look at the inside of the trunk later, and you can get a better idea. The good thing is, none of this is not Bondo. This is all just metal, so I don't have a lot of BS to deal with. I can just cut this out and remold, reform sheet metal in its place, and do the best I can to make it look good. So that'll be a fun little project. I don't think they make replacement panels for this car. I know the Galaxie, the four-door hard tops are more popular than the sedans. I don't know the big differences between the sedan and the hard top as far as the rear quarters go. It's probably the same, but I don't think they make replacement sections. So this will be an easy enough fix, even for a novice. You can see the nonsense trailer hitch they put on this thing. I don't know what they were ever pulling with this thing, but hopefully nothing ever. Maybe like a couple 100 pounds, maybe, if that. So we'll move to the fuel tank. So the 65 had a 20 gallon, and the 65 was a one-off year only for the 20-gallon fuel tank. Afterwards, they moved to a 25-gallon, and I believe they do work, but you have to modify them. I don't know all the details in that because we're going to be doing a fuel cell anyway. But again, we're still looking at the fuel tank. Our leak was around here, under the strap. And I believe we had another one over here. There's springs, our brake lines going to our awesome drum brakes. Passenger side is a little crusty. Driver's side is much worse. You can see that's where one of our brake lines is leaking. There and there, where it goes from steel to rubber and the flexible part. So these cars are somewhat popular because the spring perch setup and the fact that you can very, very easily replace this spring with an airbag, and they make kits for these cars. It's probably the easiest car in the world to put an air ride suspension on. So this is our driver's side rear passenger footwell. You can see it's getting kind of see-through in certain spots. There is some metal in behind here. I don't know what that is. We'll find out when I start tearing this apart, but this is really the worst of it on the driver's side. And then the passenger side, and again guys, like right here, it's just undercoating and there's just dirt and stuff. You see, it's just metal. This undercoating kind of sucks because it's moisture gets up in there and gets trapped, but we lucked out pretty well. So guys, it's a little tricky to show you how the body on frame setup works on this car while I'm on a creeper, but these are called torque boxes. There's a set in the front and a set in the rear. And basically, you can see this is part of the body. This is the inner lip, and then this is the outer lip. And the body just sits down over the frame. Ignore that. But the frame comes down to here, just ends about there. The torque box begins, and then the frame begins again over here, and then you have a cross member, and then the rest of the frame goes to the back of the car. It's like that on both sides, and of course the front is similar, and then of course it's slightly different when it goes to the K frame and all that, or the K member rather. Passenger side, rear passenger footwell, about the same. Got some weird metal insert on the inside of this, but this is about the worst of it. You can see a little bit of carpet. And I'll have to see if I can get inserts, just cut all this out and put a new pan in place. If not, I'll build something. We're back on the driver's side. Here's our driver's side torque box. Frame. So we have our footwells, exhaust, driveline, exhaust, footwells, and frame. So moving to the front of the car. We see the back of the transmission, and this is our emergency brake linkage. That's just very very much not doing anything anymore. The cross member for the transmission. This is a C4, a little guy, but probably one of the favorite transmissions of drag racers and pretty much, I don't know, anyone who likes C4s, I guess. They are very easy to work on. You don't need any specialty tools. And parts are still available, of course. And you can build these to hold quite a bit of power. And we are actually going to keep the C4 with, no matter what engine I go with, we are going to keep the C4. Nice and leaky, somewhat new, some kind of solenoid, vacuum solenoid. You can see over here somebody had a little boo-boo with the jack. Then there's a dent like right there. So who knows? I'm glad that's all it did. I didn't go through the floor. So up here you have a better view of the torque box. This is the passenger side. You can see where the frame, where the body ends, frame begins, and then the frame ends and torque box begins, etc., etc. Comes up to here where you have more frame that goes to the front of the car, all that fun stuff, but then it also goes back to the transmission cross member. Again, this might be a little disorienting. It's very hard on a creeper, even though the quick jacks are on the highest setting. But most of us are familiar with the underside of any vehicle. You can see up through the engine bay, hood's open, manifold, side of the engine, etc. Rusty oil pan, starter. And the same thing on this side, the torque box setup. There will be much more detailed, better videos of this car in the future, obviously, as I'm completely dismantling the thing. So, see where the frame continues, trailing links and all that stuff. Leaky power steering pump is what's leaking on the fuel pump there. And we've got our trunk open. I don't know what spare that is. It is all aluminum. I don't know if that's like a rare item or something, if that's original to the car. I have no idea. So, goodies in the trunk. We have our wiper blades, our Galaxie symbols, missing the zeros except for the one extra little window roller, spark plug wire thing, extra dipstick, air dryer for an AC system, some trim. This is a York style compressor, and there's our patch. There's no telling if it works. I'm sure it needs rebuilt regardless. I'm sure that was just pulled out of a junkyard just to have. I'm assuming this bracket has something to do with it. And this is a little jar or a little can full of extra stuff. We don't need to get into that. This piece is a Mark IV. I'm assuming this came out of a Lincoln, but the Mark IVs didn't start till the mid-70s. I don't know if this is going to fit or work. Maybe it does. Maybe that Mark IV is off of just a different Ford model that also said Mark IV as a trim or something. I don't know. Dual squirrel cage blower motors. And this is for AC. I really don't. I don't think I'm going to use this. So maybe I don't know. But yeah, this is an evaporator. So this is an original air unit out of some Ford that I'm assuming I can make work in this car. If I don't break it. Do I plan on running AC in this car? No, not really. And if I did, I would go with a modern vintage air with a Sandin style compressor, not that style. So this big box is obviously part of, behind that is the fuel tank and differential. So what I might do, I may remove, obviously the fuel tank needs to be replaced anyway, but what I might do is cut this, you know, just square this out and basically extend the trunk into as far to the differential as we can without it getting in the way, and put a fuel cell, an accessible fuel cell in this space once I cut this square out. And then I might even use the same piece and just flip it around. I'll probably just use new sheet metal, but something I thought about doing.
That way I'll have an accessible fuel cell and still have a ton of trunk space. Now guys, I wanted to show you that's basically all they did back in the day. You had all this room for things to just get stuck down in there. So maybe they had some kind of plastic insert on some of the models, I don't know. But it's just this huge open cavity where you can just see, oh, I don't know what that is. It's just the sheet metal to the outside, that's it. That's all they gave you. That's why these cars are not as heavy as they look. You would be surprised. Same thing over here. All this room for stuff to just get lost and stuck down in there. Because it was a trunk, they didn't care. Nobody focused on trunks.